Welcome to the Temple Institute's Q&A Tuesday. I'm going to talk today about a question that we get so often and from so many people that I can't even name a certain individual who asked the question, because we go around and we speak and we do seminars and things, and every time we do something, we're talking about the concept of principles. It's in our mission statement. We talk about principles all the time. And so people are always asking, are there really principles? What are principles? Why do you talk about principles so much? What's the big deal about principles? And so I want to address that question today because it's fundamental to everything that we do at the Temple Institute, and it's fundamental to success in life. Stephen Covey, and you'll find this on the intensives page, he said that success is dependent upon the internalization of correct principles. And he's absolutely right, and that was his legacy. You know, he and many others taught the concept of natural law or principles that govern human life and human behavior, and success is dependent on our understanding and living those principles. Well, I want to read you something that John Quincy Adams, he wrote some letters to his son while he was in Russia, and his son was in the United States. His son was about 10 years old. And in one of these letters, he said, "It is essential, my son, in order that you may go through this life with comfort to yourself and usefulness to your fellow creatures, that you should form and adopt certain rules or principles for the government of your own conduct and temper. Unless you have such rules and principles, there will be numberless occasions on which you have no guide for your government but your passions." Okay, so what is John Quincy Adams saying? He's saying there are certain principles that will make you comfortable and happy and useful and productive, that will help you to have good relationships and people to like you and you to like them. You'll be useful to your fellow human beings, and you'll have a comfortable life if you form certain principles that you live by. And if you don't, then what's going to govern you, the government of your temper, is going to be dependent on your passions or how you feel. You'll just go with whatever is how you're feeling. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling happy, if you're feeling excited, if you're feeling motivated, then you might get something done, or you might be mean to somebody, or whatever it is. It's ultimately going to be dependent on your mood and how you're feeling that day if you don't have certain principles that govern you. And aside from just, this is my set of principles that I love, that I'm using to make my decisions and to move forward in my life, the argument that we make, that many of the greats have made in history, that all books of scripture make, that religions make, and many of the great modern thinkers make, is that actually that's good. The first step is to have some certain principles that you always adhere to, but the best way to live your life is to live by the principles, the absolutes, the natural laws that govern human conduct. So one of the ways I explain this, a lot of places that we go, is if you were to go to the self-help section and you were to look at all the financial books in the financial section, and you were to take those down and read through 20, 30, 40 financial books, let's say, you would find out that there are about, 5 to 10 things that they all have in common. They all seem to cite, ultimately, there's a handful of things that they all think you should do, and those things are the principles. They have those things in common because every financially successful individual has lived by a certain set of principles, and they're common to all of them. When you read, for example, The Millionaire Next Door, and they describe this is the kind of person that's a millionaire next door, there are so many commonalities, so many things that they have done similarly to each other that you could actually write them out as a set of principles. If you live that way, if you do the things that all these millionaires did, then you could become a millionaire too. It's not rocket science, and it's not a mystery, and it's not luck. Success in any area of life is dependent on an understanding and adherence to those principles that guide success. If you have a marriage and you continue to do things that your spouse isn't aware that you're doing, or you tell them that you're doing certain things and you do other things, you hide certain behaviors, you hide addictions, all that kind of stuff, there's going to be no trust. And trust is fundamental. It's a principle of any successful relationship. You have to have trust. And that understanding that trust is foundational to any good relationship will guide the decisions that you make and how you treat that person and how you run that relationship, because you're not going to be successful unless there's high levels of trust. So you need to understand what trust is, all the characteristics of trust, which I call those principles of that core idea, and how then can you make your behavior in harmony with those principles. So in our mission statement, we say that we want individuals and families of noble character, and the way that they'll develop that noble character is through understanding and applying true principles to their lives. And so all of our programs work toward helping you have the tool set to identify those principles. There's many tools for identifying principles. Of course, in the How to Read training on principles, and then other of the How to Read trainings and all of the reading programs, we highlight a set of principles for you to look at and understand, and then you read about them, and then you think about them, and then you try to apply them. And of course, in the intensives, it's very centered on principles, and you're finding them with us, and we're helping you to apply those principles, because that's what success is dependent on in every key area. Whether you want to homeschool your children, you need to understand principles of child development and principles of education and principles of relationships. Whether you're trying to move up the corporate ladder in your business, then what principles are dependent on success in your area of expertise, or how can you discover who you are, etc., etc., etc. So what's the big deal about principles? Why do we talk about it so much? Because we believe, we know through life experience, through the experiences of those we see around us, and through our extensive education in the great books and through history, we see principles make or break individuals, families, societies, and civilizations. You know, I could go on and on about the history of the 20th century history of China and how they eradicated many fundamental principles from their society through the adoption of communism, and how they reintroduced many economic and financial principles back into their system in order to create the prosperity that they've experienced in the 21st century. So there are numberless examples of this concept, but I wanted to address specifically, why are we talking about principles so much? Why are we making such a big deal about them? Why do we claim that there are principles that we should live by and that there are absolutes that apply to me and you? It's because there's such a thing as natural law, and there's such a thing as true principles that apply now and forever in ancient Egypt, and into the future. Those same principles will govern human conduct, and the better you can know and understand what a principle is and how to identify it and how to apply it to yourself, the happier and more successful that you'll be. So if this information was helpful to you, please pass it on to a friend, and like us on Facebook. You can join our email list and receive the free article From Opinions to Principles. You could get on our YouTube channel and subscribe there. And let us know what questions you have about building character through the classics. What elements are you struggling with? Is it doing things specifically with your children? Is it your own education? Is it principles? Is it reading and discussing skills? What is it that you're struggling with? And send us in those questions and we'll answer them on Tuesdays. See you next week.